Okay, we're live. Hey y'all, this is a completely and totally impromptu video to you. I felt very called today to talk to you about grief. And I have a super special guest who I'm going to bring on, if I can run my tech appropriately, Tracy Wilkinson. All right, Tracy, just a second here. We're going to have to cut all this part out. There we go. Add. There we go. There's Tracy. I can't believe we did it. Okay, we've got Tracy Wilkinson here, who can attest no less than 20 minutes ago, I called on the phone and said, I feel called to talk to the community about grief. And would you get on the phone with me? And here you are. So thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So my first question or ask of you, Tracy, is let me set the stage a little bit of why I think this is running through me. I'm hearing people talk about grief in the big ways, right? Like the known ways. Um, like Tracy, we were just mourning, still continue to mourn the loss of a young adult who we knew as a child. Um, Continue to walk with her family. I hear people talk about the big griefs like ending marriages. I hear people talk about the big griefs like losing partners to health issues, end of life. And I hear maybe more silent griefs. My
mm,
job's not what I want it to be. My house isn't what I want it to be. I'm just holding so much the big griefs and the small griefs. And I just want to speak that into a conversation. And so I want listeners to know, viewers to know a little bit about you first, because I know why I called you. I know what your background is. Would you just talk a little bit about your professional experience and why you think you were my first call?
I love being in the space of grief because I think our culture, Western culture, American culture, we don't, we, we, there's lots of ways we can do it better. And but the feelings around it are so strong. My feelings, when I'm grieving, my feelings are so strong that I want to have places to put it. I want to have ways to deal with it. And so that's why I really like talking about it. Um, my background includes that I'm an ordained Unitarian Universalist minister, and I served as minister of pastoral care in a large congregation, as you know. And so in pastoral care, I was with families, all the multi generations of families, in all kinds of grief. And I learned so much walking alongside of all the beautiful people. And then also, I've served as hospice chaplain, so being with people in a medical setting at their homes, but dying um, with medical reasons. So those are some of them.
And you also have taught chaplains to be, right? How to be present in hospital situations, hospice situations. So it's all of the beautiful things that you said professionally and teaching people to really be in relation with all that comes with those big moments of hospital care or hospice care, and how to walk with someone. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So given that, and I love how you say it, like you love the conversation about grief. And for me, that like almost like want to burst into tears because it like it invites the rest of us to be in it with you, to be in it with ourselves. Like you're inviting us into that. So my first question is, and I probably only have three, and we'll wrap up here. My first question is, would you talk about, and I alluded to this in the beginning, would you talk about some of the ways that grief shows up? Like maybe it's the big stuff, but maybe it's the small stuff too. Can you just share a little bit about where you see grief happening, if that question makes sense?
In my life, in people's lives,
All
both.
of it. Dig in from anywhere. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. The story that comes to mind is you may have heard the story of that there's a big vessel, and then there are big boulders and little pebbles and sand. And my job is to put all the things into the vessel. And if you, if I start with the sand, there, and then there's the small pebbles, and then the big stuff, there won't be room. It won't all fit in the vessel. But if I put the big things in first, and then if I put the big boulders in first and then the pebbles filter in, and then the small sand, there's room for the sand.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that
Mm-hmm.
translates into, regarding your question, that like when we deal with the big stuff, we have room for the little stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, but it's happening. All of it's happening all the time.
Yeah. 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 And in that analogy, I mean, what strikes me with that is I feel like the grief can be the big things and the grief can be the small things. And sometimes when we can't even name the big thing very well, right? Like I think we all maybe feel permission to like know that it's quote unquote okay to grieve that big stuff. But if we can't even really name that and talk about it, I feel like it's almost impossible to name and talk about those little sands and those little specks. And so when you describe that, for me, it was like all of it seems like the grief, right? The big, the little, the small. And it's just how we walk through, how we
I,
journey through life. Go.
I've heard it said that all of the griefs are
Hmm.
leading up to the big one, which is our own
Mm.
death.
Yes.
Because in our
Yes.
own death, we lose everything. Or
Yeah.
some people might say we gain everything, but we have to lose everything that we currently know.
Yeah. 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 Um, which leads me to the next question of, well, I'll ask this one first and then I'll save that last one. What surprises you about grief?
How, what's the word? What our inclinations are
Mm,
is not going to end us up in the right place most of the time. Counterintuitive. To grieve, to grieve well, it's often a path of something that's counterintuitive. And two specific things come to mind. That in order, I think the biggest key about grief is that in order to move beyond it, we have to go through it.
mm,
We can't go
mhm,
around it. We
yeah,
have to feel. We have to feel all of the things. And grief can be very complicated with all kinds of emotions happening at the same time. And we have, in our job is to feel all of them. And then
mhm,
as we do, when I feel the sorrow, I can begin to let it go. When I feel
mhm.
the anger, the regret, the deep love, the longing, the nostalgia, I can let them go only after I felt them.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. Um, grieve well. When we grieve well. I love that phrase. And I think it's something that we're so not practiced at. And I think feeling our feelings is something that we're often not practiced at in the world around us, maybe even counters against actually feeling, right?
Right,
Just like, just stop, just don't. And so the counterintuitive piece being something that surprise might be the most surprising. I just want to add a little bit in here. So, you know that I did children and youth ministry, and I would journey with the youth and children in their grief, right? Like through divorce, through death of a parent, through loss of a stuffy. I mean, grief and kids is real. And they seemed closer to their ability to navigate and grieve well, right? And so it was the parents with whom I would do work to help them understand the grieving process or being in it. And I remember working with parents and assuring them that when their children were going through grief, it can look counterintuitive. It can look like, they're crying in the corner one moment and then they're out jumping on the trampoline the next. And children and getting into the youth years, I mean, there's just like pivot at age 11, 12 spiritually is my experience and belief. But right up until then, I firmly believe children are just so much closer to being able to metabolize and grieve well and like feel all the feels. So the counterintuitive piece, I just wanted to lift that with that little story about how children tend to grieve because parents will think, oh, well, you cried and then you're over it. And it's actually not true. It's really cyclical. And you can come into joy and you can come into sadness and you're feeling all the feels and the way, the seasons, Tracy, like the anniversaries after a big loss and the way the sun hits on your face remind you of something like when you thought you maybe were over it, quote unquote. Like I love what you said earlier to the question before about it's like it's almost our job to go through these griefs in this life now, preparing us, whatever our theological beliefs are, right, about what happens when we shed these bodies. But it's preparation. So I'm going to ask a final question, which is, as we got these beautiful souls out there, right, who are listening to this and maybe going through some grief themselves, whether it's one of those big rocks or a teeny piece of sand, what would you offer them as something that you would encourage them to do? Yeah.
It's another thing that's counterintuitive, and it really comes up when you talk about the kids and their parents, that in our culture especially, we're so often told, be strong for others, be strong for the children, be strong for the whatever, be strong. Like that's the message that we get all the time. And so for people who are grieving, I offer the question, what is strength? Because
Mm,
maybe it's not stoicism. Maybe it's allowing ourselves to feel things. Because when I can feel it, I can be with you as you feel it.
uh,
If I'm not allowing myself to feel all of the things, then I'm going to be telling you things like, oh, it'll be better tomorrow. Oh, well, at least they're not in any pain. Oh, all the platitudes that we have. But if I can feel my own pain, the whole mixture of it, then I can just sit with you and love you. And I don't
mm.
need you.
Oh my God, Tracy, we're going to end it there. We're going to end it there. I am so, so grateful to you to get on for this quick chat about grief. It is an honor to know you and to journey with you and to teach with you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. A million thank yous. We will talk soon, my friend.
I